Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Alexic, and I'm the External Outreach Manager at the Anglo-American University and the coordinator of AAU Academy. I would like to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the AAU Academy and thank you all for joining the webinar today. We will wait a couple of minutes until everybody comes and then we'll get started.
Dear guests, dear participants, welcome. My name is Veronika Mořišová, and many of you know me already from previous events of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. For the ones who don't, I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber, and today I would like to welcome you at this webinar, which we organized together with our partner, the AAU Academy of the Anglo-American University. I'm very happy that you have found yourself a time to join us today. We as a chamber do realize that it's a very difficult time for everybody right now, and we do hope that we will be very soon able to come back to our standard lives and, of course, to meet with you all at our events in person. In the meantime, we will continue to organize various virtual events, and I hope you will enjoy the event today, and that the presentations and the discussion will be valuable and beneficial for you. I wish you all good health and a quiet day, and I will pass the word now to my colleague Eva Rivera from the AAU Academy.
Good evening and welcome everybody. My name is Eva Rivera. I'm the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at the Anglo-American University, and on behalf of AAU and the AAU Academy, first of all, I would like to thank Veronika, not only for her words, but also for the opportunity of this joint webinar. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce has been an important partner for our university for a long time, and we are happy that we can now count with the Chamber's support also for the AAU Academy. So thanks for that indeed. And now back to Dana, who will introduce to you our esteemed speakers, who will be very shortly sharing and discussing with you interesting insights of how to go about the new normal and what to expect for post-2020. Enjoy.
All right, well, thank you everyone. Let me introduce the first speaker, whom you probably already know. Adéla Schicker is the founder of procrastination.com and also the author of the book End Procrastination. She is an avid traveler who's lived in 11 different countries on 4 continents. And she's also a long-term an outstanding networker with an eye for people's talents, focusing on helping individuals as well as companies grow. For the past several years, Adéla has been an AAU Career Center coach. She's really popular with her students, and we are therefore especially proud of having her be a part of the AAU Academy as well. Today, she's joining us from Switzerland, and she will present some insights on communication and productivity during this unique start of the decade. Welcome, Adéla, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And hi, everyone.
Hi. Okay, so our next speaker is a distinguished guest, and I would like to welcome Mr. Tomáš Pospíšil, who is a Czech career diplomat and currently the deputy head of the EU delegation in Uruguay. He is joining us today from hopefully sunny Montevideo. Tomáš has experiences from diplomatic missions in Moscow, Brussels, and New York, and has been working for the EU diplomatic body since 2015. Tomáš, welcome. We are really curious what you are going to share with us regarding the impact of the pandemic on diplomacy and international travel, or rather its restrictions.
Thank you, Dana. It's an honor, and everybody, warm welcome from the Southern Atlantic.
All right, and last but certainly not least, I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Tomáš Klvaňa. Tomáš is a senior international management consultant and a leadership coach. He has worked in senior management positions at British American Tobacco, and as a consultant, he advised numerous companies and organizations around the world. Tomáš also served as a spokesman and policy advisor for the President of the Czech Republic, has founded the Aspen Institute Central Europe in Prague, and is a visiting professor at the New York University. Today, Tomáš will take a look at 8 strategic trends that will shape the workplace of the future and will explain why we should focus more on our brains and neuroscience. So Tomáš, we are very happy to have you join us.
Hey, how are you? I hope you can all see me. I cannot see myself, but I'm certainly very glad to be here with you.
All right, great. So I'm certain that you're looking forward to hearing more from all of these fantastic speakers whom we are very proud to have involved with the AAU Academy. Now, here again, you can see the agenda for today. We will start with Eva first, who will briefly introduce the AAU Academy.
Okay, thank you. Now, as Dana just mentioned, this webinar is special for us in many aspects because it is also the launch of the AAU Academy, a brand new and very much anticipated project of the Anglo-American University. The Anglo-American University is the first private university in the Czech Republic with teaching language English, holding both the Czech and also American academic accreditation with students and faculty from all over the world. And that is actually very characteristic for the Academy as well, a personalized teaching methodology. And as such, AAU actually celebrates its 30 years anniversary this year. So, you know, there's always something to celebrate. Now, the AAU Academy, precisely introduced at the occasion of AAU's 30 years anniversary, is the implementation of AAU being a learning hub and its commitment to education to many different audiences across fields and generations. And as a result, the AAU Academy has a unique portfolio of learning opportunities in 3 different tracks and will offer executive courses, personal advancement courses, as well as an immersive track of courses called Love Prague, through which you can gain academic and practical insights into the city's art, culture, and history. But instead of explaining much more about the AAU Academy at this time, let's go and listen together to our speakers and topics, which are in fact representing what the AAU Academy will provide you with on a broader scale. So with no further ado, I will now pass on the word to Adéla.
Perfect. I hope everything worked technically and you can hear me and see me. I think that with the second Tomáš, I will pretty much be talking a little bit about the neuroscience and about why scientific know-how and understanding how we behave in the world actually helps us when it comes to communication, productivity, but when it comes to even things like leadership and dealing with Corona, as let's say it's all around us. In here, one of the most important things when I'm talking to anybody is explaining how human brain works. If I would like to very much simplify it, you can see a human brain as a one part, the reptilian brain that we all share with all the animals around the world. Then we have the limbic system, the one that's all about emotion, passion, about wanting to learn and wanting to fall in love, but wanting to be angry as well. And neocortex, part of our brain that's more responsible for rationality, for pretty much when you have to focus on your work, doing your taxes, or maybe being on LinkedIn or being on webinar at 6:00 p.m. And now if you meet anybody ever in your life, you will understand that the metaphor that everyone you know is an elephant and a rider. Elephant being part of our brain neocortex because it evolved for the shorter time during the human evolvement, and the elephant, the huge limbic system that's all about emotions. So next time when you feel, for example, like having a glass of wine or beer instead of working on the presentation or working on some important thing, you can always blame your elephant. Why am I saying this? It's really important to acknowledge that no matter if you have a discussion with somebody, if you have conversation, if you're being a leader, if you're being a teacher or a student, everybody else you're going to meet is going to have an elephant in the rider. You're getting into an argument, that's 2 elephants fighting. You need to be more productive. You need to start working on something. First, you need to persuade your elephant to do so. So please try to think that every day literally is the struggle between the elephant and the rider itself. And we have to learn a way how to understand our brain in order to become our better self. It's going to be a little bit of a zoo, so apologize because I'm all about the slides. But on the next slide, I have another animal. This one is something that I have been struggling immensely, training companies all around the world, because there has been a research done on rats in the laboratory where scientists just literally close the rats in the see-through boxes, put the lid on it, and for the first few days, the rats were trying to jump, try to escape the box. And what happened after? Well, after a few days, they just give up. The scientists put the lid off, but the hamster or the rabbit or the rat or whatever animal they put in, it never jumped again. It acquired something that's called the learned helplessness. And we all, sadly, have a tendency to have this learned helplessness. We have an idea that, oh, you know, we survived the first wave of Corona, but now I can't do it again. We've done so good on this thing, but maybe I failed, or maybe I haven't finished my diploma. Maybe I haven't finished something that I need to. Maybe I'm learning sports that I no longer can get better in. And we have this learned helplessness. And the same way as we have to deal with our emotions and our rationality, we have to deal a lot of the times in business and out of it with people that have this learned helplessness, and sometimes with ourselves and our own little hamster idea of being helpless. And so it's super important that we have a part of the brain, and I told you it's going to be about neuroscience. It's part of the brain called amygdala. It's about in this side of your head. And that is something that scans on daily basis for negative things. It pretty much looks all around you for negative news, for the people who are positive. It looks for terrible things that are happening globally. And it's up to us to sort of forget our hamsters and focus our elephants and our riders towards the positivity. And don't forget the Losada ratio. You need at least 3 positive things every day to overcome 1 negative. So my slide number 2 is all about focusing from the negativity to the positivity. And to finish with the real zoo and with the importance why we always try to train students especially, but even leaders and bosses about the importance of critical thinking, living in the era of hoaxes and fake news and half-truths. It's really important to understand that using critical thinking to get better in your own productivity, get better in dealing with your emotions, having this need and urge to educate yourself and know things better and understand them thoroughly and reaching for the real why, not just consuming things that are easy there for you. That is pretty much the core of overcoming procrastination, since that is my topic and everybody always asks me, is overcoming procrastination all about perfectly scheduling things, organizing your day? Is it about being every there second on the second? No, it's actually about really thoroughly understanding your emotions, how your brain works, and sort of use this shield of critical thinking in order to pretty much select the informations that are getting to you and the way how you use the information. Because imagine how different of a conversation it is when you have 2 people who are sort of using critical thinking right ahead, talking about a difficult topic. And I'm sure we will talk about some things that are a little bit heavier today, and people who not. And the Cobra is there because lately I've learned this perfect example of when UK, when British were colonizing India, they had a problem struggling with too many cobras being all around. And so they thought, okay, how are we going to deal with these cobras? How are we going to get rid of them? And so they told Indian people, they said, you know, every single time you're going to bring us a cobra, we're going to, a dead one, of course, we're going to pay you some money. And they thought, okay, this is going to solve our problem. We're going to give some money to the people. We're not going to have cobras. But what happened? People are smart. So they come up with an idea that they started breeding the cobras. So they have more dead cobras to bring to the British people and to actually make more money. And this to me is a perfect last example of today of something that is called unintended consequences. And that's why critical thinking, emotions, and learned helplessness all sometimes leads us to making decisions like the pretty much Cobra decisions, and we're not seeing really where we're going. So to summarize this up, and why I am so happy to be part of the AAU and helping students and actually really learning with them as much as I can, is this idea that sometimes we all have good intentions, we have all the know-how, but we're not using it correctly. And you know the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So hence this idea to always have the shield of critical thinking and really work on that and trying to be better and trying to use that not only in communication, but as well when giving yourself a little bit of a lift and being positive. And I know we're grown-ups, but I'm a major lover of Harry Potter. It's been something that his values are just guiding me throughout life. So my quote for today is by Professor Dumbledore, saying that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if only one remembers to turn on the light. So in the case of second wave of Corona, a lot of lockdown and our jobs being difficult, I am so happy that we're meeting on a beautiful occasion. And I'm just hoping that after today, even more, you would sort of tend to see more the positivity and all the light in the world. And I hope I didn't run over my time. And thank you so much for listening to me. I'm looking forward to the panel and to the discussion.
Thank you, Adéla. Thank you so much. And time is good, all is good. And I did love the zoo, did love the elephants and friends. And surely this was very helpful, and not only for students, but I'm convinced that for all of us, for professionals and adults, so we can all be now switching on the light in these little darker times. So thanks again, Adéla. And now a little different topic is what our next speaker will talk to us about. And while his perspective concerns, of course, diplomatic and international relations, I wonder already what parallels we can draw for the world of business and our own personal lives from the experiences Tomáš Pospíšil will now share with us. So Tomáš, the floor is yours.
Right. Okay. I hope the IT system is not letting me down. Okay. Well, good afternoon or good evening from Uruguay, the Southern Atlantic. Adéla mentioned the animals. We all saw the exotic animals, and I'll be taking you back away from the zoo to a place where some of these exotic animals actually live, not the cobras though. And I'll take you to Uruguay. And I thought of presenting a bit first the situation in Uruguay related to COVID, because the situation is not known to many, and yet it can serve as an example in many aspects. So next slide. Excellent, thank you. So very briefly, basic facts about Uruguay. It's stuck between, located between Argentina and Brazil. It has a 3.5 million population, 12 million cows. The size of it is twice as big as the Czech Republic and half of the area of Germany. Now, it's known for red wine, steaks, and tango. And it's also known as the Switzerland of Latin America. And this country, with its very stable democracy and economy, has been hit by the COVID pandemic in mid-March. And immediately, the government took action. Almost the entire economy switched to remote activities or basically stopped. There was no real lockdown though, there was not even curfew as in other countries, for example, in Argentina. But the population was seriously recommended to stay at home. Borders have been closed for foreigners. And this in result ensured that in total since March, now end of October, we have had only 2,500 positive COVID cases. And currently we have less than 500 active cases. We also have the highest testing pace in the region. And yet it seems like no one in this country believes that this virus is just a flu. People have been taking it very seriously despite the low numbers, which is to me very surprising and amazing. Adéla mentioned the fake news and hoaxes, and earlier this year I was actually tasked to write a report on fake news related to COVID in Uruguay, and there was nothing to write about. So as a result, Uruguay is the only Latin American country whose citizens are now allowed to enter the EU and where most economic activities have been resumed. Well, except for the travel and hospitality business, because borders remain closed. And it's also worth mentioning that the Uruguay government has, since the start of pandemic, demonstrated excellent public communication with daily press briefings where the president himself would personally inform the population about the developments. And as a result, Uruguay is one of the few democratic countries globally, I believe, with 60% approval rate of their government, which is amazing. Next slide. Now some words about the travel in the times of pandemic. Sadly, given the latest information, it is estimated that only some 20% of the world population will have access to a COVID-19 vaccine by the end of 2021. It's bad news, but as it is. And yet, even this date can still be delayed. The international cooperation in containing the virus is now finally becoming a reality. This is thanks to initiatives such as COVAX, under which various countries from all over the world pool their resources to have a better position negotiating with pharmaceutical companies developing the vaccines. And I'm happy to say that the European Union is very active in this field. However, as I said, it's going to take a long time, and closed borders and serious restrictions and international travel will most likely continue damaging international business links. The EU is interlinked more than any other regional group of countries, and the freedom of movement has been one of our basic principles. So in Europe, a permanent closure of borders since March has not really happened. But what we see in the news does not give us much optimism to think that the Schengen freedom of movement will be fully restored soon. Now here, although as I said, Uruguay has been successfully resuming a large part of its economy, one important sector, the tourist industry, still continues to be paralyzed. And here the borders are closed for all non-residents, but even residents coming in must have a negative PCR and then quarantine for 7 or 14 days. And the local authorities are with great concerns considering options of allowing foreigners to enter the country, which I believe is more or less, or has been more or less the case in Europe over the last months. But today, the president of Uruguay announced that most likely the borders will remain closed, given the very negative dynamic in this region. Until now, I have witnessed only one type of exceptions to these closed borders, and it was linked to major business interests. And based on negotiations through diplomatic channels, the migration authorities of Uruguay do allow important foreign businessmen to enter the country and to enter without the need of quarantine. Next slide. And issues like this may actually be the new responsibility of diplomatic missions for the following months. Securing access, i.e. Securing access of business representatives from one country to another. Because until COVID, embassy trade promotion had been mainly about trade fairs or opening doors and defending interests with foreign governments. Now, most of this has stopped now. In certain countries with severe lockdown, the state administrations basically stopped functioning. And in those countries, I have colleagues trying to unsuccessfully reach anyone relevant in a foreign ministry for months. And diplomacy has always been about personal contacts, personal chemistry, and personal meetings with handshakes. Therefore, switching to cyber diplomacy has put all diplomatic services globally under a major stress test. In the EU Diplomatic Service, which is the service I work for, we have strict sanitary protocols, both in Brussels headquarters and the EU delegations all over the world, adjusted to the local pandemic situation. As you may have heard from the news, even the top EU representatives immediately self-isolate after it turns out that someone in their surrounding has tested positive for COVID. And the physical presence of my colleagues in Brussels has been seriously limited, exactly to ensure business continuity in case some staff fall ill. Now, luckily, in the EU Diplomatic Service, someone had this visionary idea, and the whole IT system was revamped just before the pandemic. So all of our desktop computers were replaced by laptops with secure connection to our internal network. And since the end of March, we here in Uruguay or anywhere else in the world, we have been able to telework from home. Now, about the Zoom diplomacy. On the one hand, Zoom teleworking has made most diplomatic meetings more effective and short. It also cut down costs on logistics and travel. Instead of flying in numerous foreign delegations, presidents from across the globe just connect to Zoom and they talk just like we do right now. However, without the personal touch, diplomacy can't really work. If you knew your counterpart from before March 2020, you can still kind of cooperate based on this knowledge. But if you are to negotiate with somebody you have met only online, the task is much harder, if not impossible. And I'm sure it's in business environment, it's more or less the same. I know most people think that all the diplomats do is drinking at receptions, but we actually go to reception not only to drink, but actually to build our personal network or to search for important information someone tells us exactly over a glass of wine. And for instance, the July negotiations of the EU recovery package proved that online meetings cannot solve everything. I heard that after long online negotiations, the final deal was reached only after the EU heads of state and government actually came in person to Brussels, spent 4 days locked up in a negotiating room, just like the cardinals in the Vatican when electing the new Pope. Yes, you can exchange your positions via Zoom, but reaching a compromise without the face-to-face discrete contacts and deals agreed in the corridors next to the coffee machine, we cannot work otherwise. Now, almost at the end of my presentation, the COVID pandemic has stopped many activities all around the world, and reportedly even ISIS in Syria at some point temporarily halted their action. But the pandemic has regrettably not been able to stop new wars from breaking out, as we can see in the fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh. And in this case, because of COVID, it is much more difficult to stop the conflict as the usual shuttle diplomacy of mediators requires good air connection and also the absence of fear for one's health when you're traveling. And my final point is about the big topic, cybersecurity. No one in their sane mind will ever say anything sensitive in an online meeting. For instance, we, the EU diplomats, have been disadvised to use Zoom for our meetings immediately after the first doubts about the Zoom platform appeared. Now we have a contract with an online platform called WebEx, and I hope it is safe, but is there anything safe in the cyber world? Well, open to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tomáš. I like your Spanish accent when you say COVID, very refreshing. And I'm almost glad, I have to say, that Uruguay closed their borders, because after you described how well they've been dealing with everything, we would be running the risk of our participants moving to Uruguay soon. But I guess the good news is that actually the business travel is an exception to those closed borders, and surely we have more opportunity to talk about that, and also about the Zoom diplomacy. I hope also people will not leave this webinar now because they're worried about the Zoom security. So hopefully this only applies to the diplomatic world. Anyway, we at the AAU Academy surely believe in the importance of the global perspective of things. And in fact, shortly, there will be a 4th track of the Academy with diplomatic topics and trainings. So we keep you posted on that too, and maybe we can then also hear more from Tomáš Pospíšil. So Tomáš, thanks again. And now we will make again a big jump to another very interesting topic about what different trends affect the future workplace and what our brain actually has to do with it. Mr. Tomáš Klvaňa, your turn now.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can see me and you can hear me, and that you can also see the slides. We are all understandably preoccupied with the pandemic, and it is already changing both the economy of and our working environment pretty dramatically. Indeed, one of our AAU Academy courses is devoted to leading and managing in the hybrid environment. But here I want to focus on an even larger trend, one that predates COVID, and that will be with us decades after COVID-19. The fact simply is that the planet is getting older, and it is getting older pretty fast. Some economies are already categorized as super aging, for example, Singapore, South Korea, and Japan. You can see some startling numbers on the screen. What does it all mean? Well, it means that baby boomers and also Generation Xers like myself will work longer than our parents, both because they are healthier and want to, but also because many need to, because they are quite unprepared for retirement. They simply just don't have enough money to retire. So on the next slide, I'm going to walk you through 8 key points that will explore this trend deeper. The first concerns the health of our brains. After decades of investing in physical well-being, the 21st century started to focus on improving brain health. As bodies already live longer, people worry that their mind will not deliver the same longevity. This, in turn, sparked research and investment in brain health. So we live longer. This is because of better healthcare, hygiene, healthier lifestyle, sufficient food, improved medical care, reduced child mortality, and a host of other reasons. Moreover, as we see in point number 3, we are experiencing falling birth rates around the globe. They, in fact, are falling well below replacement rates in advanced and advancing economies. There simply are not enough young people and employees to replace the old. For the first time in history, the world is seeing societies where there are more old people in the population than young. That is a huge change. Traditionally, societies are organized around the young because the numbers were simply so much greater. But that is no longer the case in many markets. So our societies are aging. Point number 5 shows us that there are some positive features to that sometimes we neglect to think about. The number of older consumers, for example, grows in size each year. The demand for products and services designed specifically for the aging population is increasing, and this segment is dramatically underserved. Point 6 is about technology. Software algorithms are rapidly changing both data processing and also business decision-making. These computer programs, as we know and can see all around, they can teach themselves to learn, understand, reason, plan, act, and many other things when blasted with data. Adoption of machine learning and artificial intelligence has actually accelerated because of COVID-19. This adoption of machine learning and artificial intelligence now allows us to adapt our products and services to the unique needs of every individual. Hence point number 7 and mass personalization. Much is now personalized and tailor-made. Let me just give you an example. I have been working with a company, a Czech startup, recently that is trying to raise investment, and that startup has developed a tailor-made, individualized probiotic treatment. That is something really interesting, but there are many companies like that. Finally, point number 8 goes one step further. It is about augmenting life. Technology improving and enhancing human decision-making and supporting better workplace performance. People are able to work smarter, faster, and more productively with better results. If you follow this trend, some of these new developments sound a little bit like a sci-fi film. Elon Musk, one of his companies, is now developing a brain chip that will be implanted in your skull. And if everything goes well, that brain chip might enhance some of the processes within the brain. Let's move on to the next slide. And this one really invites a question. Why focus on brains and psychology when, for example, we want to improve our leadership, management, creativity, and even entrepreneurship? The answer is because of the tremendous progress in neuroscience and the psychology of adult development, and also because of the applicability of these new insights to the fields like management. So on the next slide, I want to think a little bit about those scientific discoveries more specifically. Exactly what can we develop in the brain that promises to make us better leaders and more productive managers? Here are some examples from the last 15 years of neuroscientific research. According to the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas, research shows that the majority of healthy individuals have potential for maintaining intellect, capacity for learning, and consistency in decision-making through their adult life when they remain mentally, physically, and socially engaged. Science is uncovering ways to strengthen high-level cognitive capabilities throughout all of life to, in fact, make our brain smarter. A key concept here is, as you can see on this slide, it's called neuroplasticity. And according to Dr. David Eagleman, throughout all of life, brain undergoes changes in relation to the environment to which it is exposed consistently. It is really tremendously important to which my brain, your brain, everyone's brain is exposed on a consistent basis. We should give it some thought. The concept of neuroplasticity has replaced the outdated position that the brain does not change and declines after the age of 40. That is not true. We used to believe that, but we now know that that is not the case. Well, there is hope, right? The final slide, I want to talk you through what is mostly the psychology of adult development. The biggest name here in this field is Dr. Robert Keegan from Harvard, who has documented for the past 30 years how adults evolve through stages of development in a manner similar to children evolving through their stages of development. As we move to the next stage of adult development, our brain evolves to a higher order and is better able to manage complexity. So that's one thing that's really exciting, even about the process of getting older, right? We can be better at managing complexity. With age and continued adult development, you can improve your ability to manage complexity and apply this capacity to work and life. You can improve your strategic focus, employ innovative cognition, and use what I would call the platinum cognitive capability, and that is integrated reasoning. That peaks in your 50s or even sometimes in your 60s, if, of course, you work on it. These are precisely the higher order cognitive skills that businesses need in a fast-paced and dynamic world. 2020 has forcefully reminded us of this point. These positive features do not happen just by themselves. The point really is, if you want to be more effective, creative, and innovative, you must take care of your brain. At the AAU Academy, we have prepared a set of executive courses that will help people to do just that. If you are interested in more, Eva will tell you about it, and then we can discuss if you have questions. That's it for my introduction.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Tomáš. These connections and connectivities really are fascinating. And I'm also glad you pointed out some positive aspects that 2020 brought to us, and also that you calmed everybody down that getting older is actually awesome. So thanks for that as well. And I'm looking forward to the questions. Of course. And so as Tomáš mentioned himself, just for your information, there will be more courses taught by Tomáš Klvaňa at the AAU Academy. And in fact, before we go in just a couple of minutes to our panel discussion, and while you might be thinking of and preparing some questions to ask our speakers, let me give you a quick overview of the Academy courses. So on this slide, you can see other courses taught by Tomáš Klvaňa, and apart from the course on brain management, we will also offer intergenerational management, design thinking and emotional intelligence, hybrid office management, very important these days, of course. And there's also corporate, legal, and business English in the first cycle of courses taught by native speakers and at the same time law and business professionals. And who are these courses intended for? Well, shortly speaking, for all ambitious professionals, leaders who want to empower their staff, business owners looking for corporate insights, and simply everybody else interested. On the next slide here, you can see that additional to the executive courses, the second track of the AAU Academy offers these personal advancement courses. Design Your Longer Life is one of them, a course also taught by Tomáš Klvaňa. And a very special course, actually a series of them, is a course on how to read facial expressions. It's one of my favorites, many of my favorites. And these courses will be taught by Mr. Jansen Raichl, one of the few instructors in Europe certified by the Paul Ekman International Institute. And I promise you that you will never look at people's faces in and outside work the same way you did before after these fascinating and really fun courses. So it's something to check out. And there are more courses in the pipeline, which will, just as Adéla did today, give you a deeper understanding of the latest behavioral trends and also tools, how to create positive outcomes in your life, including techniques, how to improve time management, etc., etc. And finally, you can have a look, you can have a look at this slide, and you can look forward to these Love Prague courses, which are just great, especially these days when what you really want is to get your mind occupied with something inspirational. You will be able to find detailed course descriptions on the AAU Academy website soon, of course. So if you're an enthusiast, not interested in a simple tour of Prague, but looking also for some academic insights and just the extra bit of information, or if you're seeking an introduction back to academic studies, or simply want to do something really cool, check them out too, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed. Well, so these are the three course tracks we have prepared for you, with many more courses to come and starting to be offered on the campus of the Anglo-American University, which is now also the seat of the AAU Academy, all starting at the beginning of 2021. And on that, maybe just one more note. Originally, all these courses were scheduled to start this very month of October, but of course we had to react in a flexible way to the current situation, and therefore, we have moved the course dates to the beginning of 2021, as we do believe, and I'm glad that Tomáš Pospíšil also confirmed this approach of ours, that because we do believe in the value of interactive face-to-face courses and therefore want to offer them on our campus. That being said, of course, we are also ready and prepared to offer remote learning formats, just as we do for our regular students, but hopefully we can get everybody up and away from their screens for a while for our courses. And of course, all academy courses are open to anyone without further academic requirements needed. And finally, and as announced on the instruction slide at the beginning of this webinar, for all of you who attended today, we have prepared a 50% discount voucher for one AAU Academy course. So that means stay with us for a little longer, and as a little thank you, we will email you your voucher. And now let's make the most out of the presence of our speakers today and start our Q&A session. For that, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. As the questions come in, I will pass them on to our panelists. So please keep sending your questions in writing, and we will answer them live. And again, please use the Q&A feature and not the chat function. Please. So if I can now also ask the panelists to start to switch on their camera, and I will open my Q&A function here. And if I may, I would now start with the first question. And it's for Tomáš Pospíšil about the travel. That always interests me a lot. So Tomáš, do you think that the lack of travel and therefore people missing out on not only face-to-face negotiations and interaction, but not only this, because you mentioned that already in your speech, but do you think that also missing out on the field for a different environment and a different culture will affect negotiations? And the reason why I'm asking this is, and again, you said part of it already yourself, I teach diplomacy classes at AAU, and one thing you find in every diplomacy book is that the venue of a negotiation, diplomatic or business, is an important factor for the outcome of the negotiations. But now we are missing these venues. So what's your opinion on this? Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Eva. Probably an EU official is not the best person to ask about the negotiation environment, because if any one of you has ever visited the EU institutions in Brussels, I have never seen in my life a more boring environment. Yet the most important decisions about the EU are done and there in Brussels. So maybe it is actually stimulating the negotiations process to be as boring as possible. Well, quite possibly, yes. I mean, obviously, with this online, as I said, online negotiations, when you sit either at home in a lockdown country or in your office, far, far away from your interlocutor, it can hardly help to put your cause very clearly. Yeah, Brussels boring negotiations room are the place to be. Obviously, if somebody is even now, like me, I'm now sitting next to the southern, like 100 meters away from the Southern Atlantic. We have plus 28 degrees today here. It's hard for me to understand the position, the psychological mindset of my interlocutor, you guys over there in Prague or in Switzerland, Adéla. So definitely, yes, it does affect a lot.
Okay, well, that's what we almost thought. So we will be trying working on that as well, of course. Okay, just a technical note. So I'd be putting the questions out there as they come in chronologically. So the ones of you who have to wait a little bit, just please bear with us. So the next question that I have here is, it would be nice to more about AAU courses on self-development that Tomáš Klvaňa told us about. So I would like Tomáš to comment on that shortly, and then to the participant who asked this question, we can get into more detail to you by writing. So my colleague Dana will type some answer to these type of questions in the chat, and also if you have more questions about the AAU courses as such, you can send us an email. We will show the email address later, you know, so we can also spend some more time on discussing the topics that the speakers have presented. But Tomáš, so could you just shortly maybe tell this participant a little bit about the self-development course?
Of course. All of these courses, we have planned several of them, but all of them are listed on the website, and Eva also will send you the presentation, hopefully, with a list of those courses. They are informed by mostly neuroscience and psychology of adult development. Some of them are more focused on management theory, but also on skills related to creativity and entrepreneurship. And they are applicable to leaders, managers, but also people who, for example, want to start their own companies. But not just that, if you want to be just a better leader in any kind of organization or activity, these can be helpful as they combine practical insight and theoretical insight. So, for example, when I say that they are informed by neuroscience and also adult development psychology, this doesn't mean that these are normal academic courses. We are immediately trying to use practical exercises and model situations to apply some of these insights, and then do I would hope quite fun exercises to instill some of the skills and capabilities right on the spot. That's why it is much better to have these courses in person, in classes. They tend to be 1 or 2 day courses, depending on which one we're talking about. But anything I'm talking about is to some extent also possibly transferable by Zoom or any kind of other remote learning mode, but not to that extent that we can experience really in class.
Okay, great. So I think, I hope that answered this question so far, and we will then, as said, get back to you by email if more information is needed. Now, the next question, or one of the next questions I have here, is for Adéla. If you could reconnect with us, Adéla, or switch on your camera. So the question is how to best overcome the lack of networking or corridor talks possibility, and is it in fact replaceable at all?
I get asked this quite a lot lately because the same way as Tomáš Klvaňa is training students on things like neuroscience and behavior, I do a lot of that with companies. And weirdly, you would think that they're missing seeing each other, or they're sick of Zoom, or they having a hard time working. What they're actually, as Tomáš said, they're missing those little encounters that are unexpected, new, that are sort of leading to small talks, or maybe something that is difficult to say over the email or over the Zoom and is better said in person. But when you think of the world as a whole, we just have a coronavirus. I don't want to belittle it, but we still live, at least most of us at the webinar here, in countries that are safe. We have drinkable water, we have great environment, we have internet, we can communicate. And honestly, it's just up to us to see, okay, now I have to be responsible. I should lock myself down. I should not meet other people, but how am I going to work on this? And it's really tough for me to tell them, okay, organize a daily meeting, or always schedule afternoon tea at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. But it's more all up to each of us to find a way of how can I sort of create those meetings and those little encounter myself. What are the things that are going to work for me? Is it playing a game online? Is it doing some, I don't know, is it watching a YouTube video and talking? Actually, I've heard of people who are watching National Geographic videos and just talking about how great it would be to travel. And I think it's the same way as if you know IKEA effect. It's named after the IKEA store, I kid you not. It's an effect or a bias that actually says that if you have two things, one you create for your own and one you just buy, the one that you create for your own, you're going to like more. Meaning if you're going to have one chair from IKEA that you assembled, probably took you 6 hours, and one that you just bought in the store, if both of them would be equally broken, you would throw away the one that you bought. You would never throw the one that's broken. So my sort of answer to this is try to be creative, try to think of your own ways, how to put all this normality back to the online action. And because it's going to be yours, because you're going to have your own autonomy, you're going to love it and it's going to work for you.
Great, excellent. I'm sure we're going to love it. And since this was already so motivating, I have immediately another question for you, Adéla. And the question is from one of our participants, and she's asking, she's saying, I have a question on procrastination. Is it considered to some extent regular character flaw or an actual psychological diagnosis? Okay,
I think
that's a complicated one.
Yeah, when we need an excuse, it's definitely a psychological thing. But I always say that the funny thing is when you're really good at procrastination, it actually means that you're extremely creative and extremely intelligent. Bear with me. If you can make excuses in front of your own and you're so creative that you trick yourself, come on, that has to mean that you're creative and intelligent. But sadly, procrastination is just more flaw of us as human beings. It's something that you can never overcome. Like one day to another, you're just never going to procrastinate. But it's something that is easy to work with. And I hope Tomáš Klvaňa is going to agree with me that it's all about learning more of how things work, more about neuroscience, about how to even trick our brains and then sort of train them like habits, like brain as any other muscle is pretty much easy to learn new things and is neuroplastic, as Tomáš said. And that's the amazing thing. We go to the gym, we're working in our muscles, but we sort of forget to work on our brain. So if we do, that's going to help us overcome the procrastination in the long term.
Okay, great. I feel I should be working on other muscles more than on the brain sometimes, but hey. Okay, so we have a couple more questions here in the pipeline and a couple of minutes left. So one question for Tomáš Klvaňa again. The question is, how do you think all this remote COVID working is affecting our productivity habits and brain developments? And then there is also a note to this. Tomáš mentioned importance of socializing to increase and maintain cognitive function. Someone wants to go to the pub here. Okay.
Well, there are many insights from your neuroscience that we have been able to gain in the last couple of decades. And that on socializing is very important, because the more social life you have and the more stimulating social life you lead, the better you will be able to actually absorb new information and use that information creatively. That's quite interesting. One other thing that is not as perhaps intuitive, but is increasingly more important as we see is, for example, is the necessity to protect your hearing. Okay, people who are getting older obviously lose their hearing, or at least their hearing gets impaired. But it is really more and more important to protect your hearing, because when you hear properly everything around, your brain gets stimulated in a normal way. Whereas if you stop hearing that, and that also obviously applies to the situation when you are isolated and you are by yourself and you are not hearing much conversation or new information, your brain does not get that stimulation. So it is quite important. I'm glad that Adéla mentioned habits, because these are absolutely crucial. You can become productive and you can stay productive in an online setting while working remotely. And some companies actually report that their productivity during the COVID crisis, when their people are working from home, has increased, right? This is not universally true, but some companies managed to do that. But we need to stay focused. Focus and strategic ability to distinguish what is important from what is not important is always there, and it is connected to our habits. One of the important habits that you should think of is digital discipline. This is your phone, right? You have all kinds of social media on that phone, like Facebook, like Twitter and Instagram and others. They can distract you a great deal. If you spend 8 hours on your computer, it is important to maintain the digital discipline, meaning that when you work for, let's say, 1 to 2.5 hours, you take your phone and put it somewhere else. Okay, that way you are not tempted to check your emails. You can, of course, do that on your computer. But again, if you switch off notifications, your productivity goes up simply because you are training new, important, productive habits. If you do that consistently, your brain gets used to that. And that's how you get into that zone that is really important for example, creativity and insight.
Okay, I'm muted. Unmuted now. I was saying thanks for that great answer. And since we are almost running out of time, I want to also put out there one question that we still have here for Tomáš Pospíšil. And that one is, diplomacy has always been tied to nation states. Globalizations and digitizations have been lifting those borders as we know them, and even more so with COVID restrictions. How has that been changing and evolving challenges within diplomacy?
Right, thank you. I saw the question, I was thinking about it, and to be very frank, I'm not sure I'm sure I fully understand it the way the author wrote it, so I apologize if I got it wrong. One of the aspects that I can mention which affected us heavily was which affected any diplomacy globally earlier this year was the consular crisis, we had, I think, about 700,000 Europeans stuck in different countries all around the world, not able to go back because of the travel restrictions, either put up by governments, by closed borders, or by the airlines stopping flying. And we had, here in Uruguay, for example, we had several cruise ships full of people who, we had a huge cruise ship with 2,000 people, different nationalities, who were not able to get on shore to fly away back to their home country. So this was a major challenge that EU diplomacy went through, and any other diplomacy globally went through, to negotiate the permissions for these people to leave these countries, and to have the resources to fly those people away, because regular airlines were canceling their flights. I think that the author meant something else in his answer, in this question, and I apologize, but I just wasn't able to grasp the main idea of the question. Apologies.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, so time is running out for us. And I know we could be going on for quite another while, and I hate to be the one preventing this, but very selfishly, I still need to ask one of my own questions here. And since we started with the lady, I would like also to finish with the lady. And so really quickly, one last question, Adéla. You talked to us about how we need to use also the negative influences from the outside and convert them into something positive. Now, are there any indicators how we can measure ourselves whether we are doing it correctly? Sort of, can we also talk about measurable outcomes in this context? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. That's really interesting, and honestly, we have been, because we work with other universities, really going through some research when it comes to exactly fighting it with negativity, overcoming some negative behavior, overcoming post syndromes of stress syndromes. And I think that it's difficult to say this is a methodology that would 100% be able to track your happiness, how it's evolving, if it's 30% better or worse than it was yesterday. But I think, again, it's up to you. And maybe, as Tomáš said, like repeating and learning your habits, the same way it's easy for you in a long term to maintain and manage your positive attitude and sort of positivity in life in general. I think that that's why a lot of people now know of journaling, everyday journaling, having gratitude journals. So we call it a flow list. Pretty much this idea that you sit down at the end of the day, you write 3 positive things, and already just by giving positive stimulus to your brains, you are already switching it to look for more positivity in the long term. So I do hope that answers your question. And if any of you are somehow in more of a sad space, please start just sort of focusing on the positive things and write them down, because when one of those worst days are coming, it's great to flip through your own writing of all the great things that happen to all of us. And they can be as easy as, hey, somebody smiled at me on the bus, or it was sunny yesterday. So I would suggest doing that for sure. And I can't hear you, Eva.
Yes, because I muted myself while I'm typing to some questions. So I was saying that I can't see myself going on the bus that much probably now. But anyway, I let you know how these self-measurements are working for me, and I hope they work for everybody else as well. Now, for everybody else whose questions could not be answered today, I apologize for that. And there's actually a couple of more pending that I will ask our speakers to go into the Q&A section and type the answers to our attendees while we share some more, last information with you. And at the same time, invite you to have a look at the AAU Academy courses, where many of these and other questions will, of course, be answered in much more depth. And if I can ask my colleague Dana to move on now to the next slide. Great, thank you very much. And so with this, I do want to say a big thank you to our great speakers. Once again, it was an absolute pleasure having you with us tonight, and thank you for collaborating with the AAU Academy. To all participants, and there were quite a few, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for finding time for this webinar tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did, and I wish you all good health, a calm mind, and don't forget, please, also, and I think especially in these times, to elevate, expand, and enrich. Thank you, and the last word goes to Dana. Thank you all. Dana, are you here?
Right. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions and for the answers from our panelists. That was amazing what you did in such a short time. And I think you've really given everyone food for thought. Allow me to echo Eva and thank you for everything so far. And now it's just past 7 p.m., which brings us to the close of this webinar. Please check your emails tomorrow, as everyone will receive the course vouchers that Eva mentioned earlier. These are valid for any course that you choose from the AAU Academy for the January 2021 course cycle. So we'll let you know when registration opens for that. And for now, any questions you have, please direct them to the AAU Academy or to me. On behalf of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and the AAU Academy, we thank you all very much again. And I'd like to add, everything that Eva said, and also you can now really take a glass of wine and rewind and relax. So have a nice evening. Thank you very much and take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.